We have a verdict and we have a sentence. Let's talk about it. Hi, folks. Tony DeWitt again with another video on the law. Remember, I don't dispense legal advice here, and this is what we're talking about today. Well, the verdict is in, and as you might guess, she was convicted on all 19 counts. And this the first portion of the jury verdict was muted for whatever reason, probably just a glitch with regard to who was controlling the audio. But we'll listen to a couple of these. They all sound pretty much the same.
The judgment of this court, you are guilty. In count 2, a jury of your peers having found you guilty of first-degree murder and the perpetration of a felony, it's a judgment of this court, you are guilty. In count 3, a jury of your peers having found you guilty of first-degree murder and the perpetration of a felony, it's a judgment of this court, you are guilty. In count 4, a judgment of your peers having found you guilty of aggravated child abuse, it's a judgment of the court, you are guilty.
Now I want to address something that I think is sometimes misused, and it's certainly been misused in this case, and that is the term common sense. I've spent time as a respiratory therapist. I was in the Army. I was a trial attorney for several years. I was an appellate attorney for even longer than that. I've dealt with a lot of different people who wanted to sue people, and I've dealt with a lot of people who were being sued by other people. And in that role as an attorney, I can tell you that I think probably better than half of the population out there doesn't have good common sense. Why do I say that, particularly in this case? Well, if you did something really heinous, like purposefully kill your child, then the very first thing you should do after you have regained what little bit of sense you have, the first thing you should absolutely do is call an attorney. And then you should keep your mouth shut until after the jury speaks its verdict. And the reason that you do that is because you do not want to convict yourself. If you wind up being convicted, you got to make it be the state's job to do that. And unfortunately, a lot of people make it very easy. And that's indeed exactly what Meghan Boswell did here. She made the state's job very, very easy. Why? Because she hid the results of her actions. Now, I'm going to suggest, for whatever purpose you may want to believe or not believe, but let's just suppose, there you go, there's a good word, suppose. Let's just suppose that she was in bed with the latest Hunter, or whatever his name was, and one of them rolled over on the baby after they made the beast with two backs and didn't realize it. And they woke up a few hours later and realized that the infant had expired. At that point, assuming that there was nothing that could be done, you would have called the police and told them what had happened, and at the very worst, the worst thing that would happen to you there is involuntary manslaughter, and that assumes that they could prove who rolled over on whom. More likely than not, in that situation, it's just a tragic accident. Nobody wants to add to the grief that the parent might feel in that situation. And so you let it go. But if you realize that you've done this horrible thing, or that this horrible thing has happened, whichever way it is, and you proceed to dispose of the infant as though she were a hot pocket that you didn't like the first bite of, that is not the way to go about securing a not guilty verdict. Also, if you have kept house like a third world goat herder and you've got garbage all over your place, you might want to consider that that might be evidence of child neglect. And you might want to do something about that before somebody comes and finds it. You might want to not tell every one of your friends a different story about where your baby is. I'm just thinking that, every person you talk to, they get to say what you said. Because as a defendant, what you say to other people is not hearsay. Hearsay is only out of court statements made by others. I heard Jim say that Bob did this. That's hearsay very clearly. But when you say, I heard the defendant say, boy, I sure am glad that I got rid of that Hot Pocket, or something to that effect, that's coming in. And anybody with common sense would probably know that everybody says, as it just accepts it, I think, as an item of faith, that honesty is the best policy, even though it might hurt, even though you might wind up doing 18 months in jail, you might wind up doing 3 years in prison. It's a lot better than life without parole. I don't want you to hate me, but I want you to think for just a minute, to have a little bit of compassion for Meghan Boswell. Her father obviously had some criminal conduct in his past. I think he's made a clean break from that lifestyle and has done very well for himself since then. But clearly, he had some issues. Her mother, well, just watch her mother and you tell me what you think.
Okay. And when did you become pregnant with your first child with him?
Um, I had my first in April and turned 16 in July. So,
Okay. And who was that child?
Tommy Jr.
Okay. And then you had Megan at some point. How old were you when you had Megan?
There's 8 years difference. I was almost 24.
It's okay. So let's talk about Megan's life growing up. Would it be fair to say that during her lifetime she's witnessed drug use between you and her father?
Yes.
What type of drugs?
Opiates, mainly.
Scoot up and speak into that so the jury can hear you.
Opiates, mainly.
Did that drug use lead to other problems?
Yeah. Arguments, fighting, yes.
Okay. You say there were
Strife
strife.
is what it brings, yes. Non-stop.
Is that something that went on pretty much her entire childhood
Yeah.
growing up?
Yeah, from the time she was pretty little, yeah.
Okay.
Mm.
Yeah, definitely not Mother of the Year material here. All of these things may have so corrupted her young life that she felt the only way to get ahead was to lie her head off wherever she had the opportunity. And as a result, she made this trial all about her mendacity. She made it about all of the different stories that she told. And she made it about that interview with the media, where even in that media interview, she couldn't keep her story straight. First it was Ethan, then it was her mom, then it was heaven knows who else. And I would point out that her mom coming in and, basically saying, hey, I screwed up in terms of her young life, that was a pretty good thing for her to do, considering how she had thrown her under the bus to the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. In my view, Meghan's actions after whatever happened, whether it was an accident or an actual homicide, whatever happened, her actions afterward were clearly of a guilty mind. I did something very bad and I have to hide it. Now, that's not new behavior among human beings. I think Adam and Eve were the ones who were found hiding by God in the Garden of Eden after they ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And they were ashamed because they had done that and they had broken the law. Well, Meghan broke the law. She was ashamed and she tried very hard to hide her culpability, and ultimately it came back on her. Her grandmother came forward and tried to offer some lifeline to her to keep her out of prison for the rest of her life.
Obviously, you've known Megan her whole life.
All of her life, I started keeping her from the time she was 2 months old till she was grown, off and on, not all the time, but off and on.
Why was that in part because of problems between your son and her mother, Angela?
Sir?
Was that because her parents were having problems?
No, she just loved me and her papa, and she stayed with us, and we loved her, and so we'd keep her a lot.
Okay. Were you aware of the violence issues between Tommy and Angela?
No, I didn't live in their home or nothing. I don't know nothing about what went on in their home, sir.
Okay.
We'd pick her up and keep her until she'd want to go back and like that, off and on.
Okay. And have you always lived down there on the same property Tommy lives on? Or?
I've now lived there for maybe 20 years, 21 or 2 or something like that.
She lived there almost all of Megan's life.
Yeah, yes, sir. Oh, yes, sir.
And you're aware, you told me, I think, one of Megan's role models was your husband, your late husband?
Sir?
Your late husband, he was one of Megan's role models?
Yes, we loved her like she belonged to us.
Okay. When did he pass, ma'am?
11 and a half years ago. Soon be 12 this summer.
So that would have been when Megan was, I guess, what?
Yeah, maybe 12 years old or
12
something.
years old?
Mm-hmm.
Did you see that take an impact on her?
Yes, it did.
I feel sorry for the woman. She obviously has a little bit of a hearing loss, but she didn't really have a whole lot more to offer other than just a plea for mercy for Meghan Boswell, which, again, was the kind thing to do. But in the end, this is what the jury determined.
All right. Madam Foreperson, did the jury come to a unanimous decision for sentencing on counts 1, 2, and 3?
Yes, Your Honor.
If you would deliver the verdict for count 1.
We, the jury, unanimously agree that the defendant shall be sentenced to imprisonment for life.
And did each member of the jury sign the form? All right. If that is each individual juror's verdict, please raise your right hand. Let the record reflect each juror raise their right hand. In count 2.
We, the jury, unanimously agree that the defendant shall be sentenced to imprisonment for life.
And did each juror sign the verdict form?
Yes, Your Honor.
If that is each individual juror's verdict, please raise your right hand. Record reflect that each juror has raised their right hand. And in both counts 1 and 2, did you find an aggravating circumstance?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. And in count 3, did you reach a unanimous verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
So it was a very sad day for Meghan Boswell, but she did bring it all on herself. But I think it was also a very sad day for Gene Scott, because I do think he genuinely cared for the young lady in a professional way. I don't believe there was any hanky-panky going on there. I think he genuinely cared for this young woman and wanted to see her get a good result. I think he knew she was going to get convicted of something. I think he hoped that it would be lesser included offenses. But as it worked out, that's just not the way it worked. It is a very sad thing for him because I felt like he did his absolute best. You know, if I was grading him on an objective matrix, I'd probably give him a 95%. Because, I mean, every lawyer in trial makes some mistakes. If they didn't, they wouldn't be human. But I do think he did a pretty good job for her, and it just didn't work out for him. And I would also throw a bone or two to the prosecutors. I thought they did very good work, particularly the young lady. I felt like her direct examinations were a lot more crisp than sort of the long-winded examinations that were done by the male. That's what I have. I mean, that's where I am at the end of this trial. I thought it was a good trial because it offered a lot of different issues to talk about, and I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts. If you guys will leave me a comment in the comments about what you thought about this trial, we'll do a video where we look at all of those comments and talk about them. So again, thank you for being here. Come on back, catch me down here tomorrow. Thanks for watching my video. If you have a request for me to cover a topic, please send me an email to the address above, and in the subject line, put video request. If you have comments, drop them in the comments down below. If you found the content worthy, please consider subscribing. Since I started doing this work, I have always asked listeners to consider doing just one kind thing every day to make somebody else smile or make their life better in some way. Please consider doing that. It makes the world a better place. Now, YouTube has some suggestions for other videos of mine you may find interesting.